So now that you know what you're going to talk about and why, it's time to move on to public speaking tip number 8. It's time to take your audience on a journey. You see, in step number 7, you figured out, you decided what you were going to talk about and why exactly you were going to talk about that. You decided why whatever it is that you were going to talk about was important. And if you remember back to the last video, you'll remember that I said when I did that exercise, one of the things that I wrote down was, for my message, was that I don't care where you're from, what you've been through, but you can be, do, and achieve anything. Listen to me. You can be, do, and achieve anything you put your mind to. And anyone who says otherwise, anyone who tells you that you can't, well, they're lying. They're lying. That was my basic message. You wrote down your basic message back on tip number 7. Now we're at tip number 8. And it's time to take your audience on a journey. It's time to take your audience on a journey from point A to point B. It's time to help them to believe, to see that your message is the exact message that they need. And in order to do that, you got to take them on a journey. You've got to share a few points with them. A few points. There's a few points that I'm sure that you want to make. You know, most people, depending on how long they're going to speak, they usually have 1, 2, 3, 4 different points that they want their audience to take away, because they know at the end of this journey, when you get your audience to point B, this is what they want their audience to be capable of doing or achieving. And so now it's time for you to take your audience on that journey. It's time to take them on the journey. You're the tour guide. Let's take them on a journey. Here's what you have to do. There's a couple of different ways to take your audience on a journey in public speaking. And one of them is there's this chronological method. There's a chronological method. And in the chronological method, we start out at point A. And point A can be a point in time. You may have watched a movie before, and at the beginning of the movie, at the bottom of the screen, right at the bottom of the screen, they may have said 1951, Selma, Alabama, or something like that, right? They may have said 1951, Selma, Alabama. They took their audience to point 1. And they started right there. And then at point 2, they went chronologically in time from point A to point B, 1952, 1953, 1954, and so on, until they got their audience to the end of the story. That's exactly what you have to do. Chronologically, you're going to take your audience from point A to point B. Another way you could do this is the spatial method. It's kind of where you start out small at one point, and then you expand and you grow and grow. Kind of like if you're figuring up just the way I just filled the screen up. We started out small. We got bigger, bigger, and bigger. The spatial method. Or there's a casual method. Now, I'm not going to tell you about all of these because, hey, it's in the book. You want to know all the details, get the book. Right? It's in there. Several different methods. You know, and the one that I love the chronological method, where you start at point A at a certain point in time and you walk your audience to point B, point C, point D, to the end. And this magical thing happens as you walk your audience through the points. You share a little bit of the story. You make a point. You share another portion of the story. You make another point. You share another portion of the story. You make a point. And throughout the story, you're giving your audience steps. You're giving them hope, encouragement, whatever it is that they need to believe and do whatever it is that you want them to be able to do and achieve at the end of the story. So I want you to think about that. Let's take your audience on a journey. What's the best way to take your audience from point A to point B? What do you want your audience to be? And when they get over there at point B, what do you want them to know? What do you want them to be able to do? And now think about the stories that you want to share to help them make that journey. Think about that. Put a little bit of thought into it. Write it down. Write down the points and the stories that you want to share, and think about the sequence of events. What's the best way to take them on this journey? What's the best way for them to watch your story grow and develop? How do we get them to the end? That's your challenge for this week. Go ahead and write it down. Start now. What stories are you comfortable with sharing with your audience? How effective will those stories be? How relevant are those stories to the journey or the message that you're sharing with your audience? Does it give them the belief that they can do and achieve whatever it is that you want them to be able to do and achieve at the end? Think about it. Get busy. And then join me on the next tip. We'll talk about tip number 9. I think tip number 9, and matter of fact, we're going to combine number 9 and 10, but we'll talk about that then. This is tip number 8. Tip number 8, take your audience on a journey. You're the tour guide. Let's have fun. Write it out, the steps, where you're taking them to. Do that now. I'll talk to you in the next video.